Hello and welcome to the 312 podcast. We are here with Dan Titus, CEO of HRP.
Hola.
And Darby Hittle, CEO?
Hello.
President?
Founder,
Founder?
president,
all
owner,
the above,
all the above.
Of Thunderbird Environmental Consultants. And we are here to take you on a journey through history, through the past to the present day, how two companies that started on similar but separate paths are now uniting in a joint venture to bring environmental services to this field and to the country. This is getting out of hand. We're going to wrap it up here and start actually getting into the meat of it here. We are talking about HRP and Thunderbird's joint venture. And let's start off this journey by talking about why we started the joint venture. And Darby, maybe you can tell us some of the history there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Tom. Thanks. The joint venture, actually, as Dan and I were just talking about before you hit record, is sort of the last thing that happened over the last 2 or 3 years. The first thing that happened was we decided that we wanted to work together. And that was after several years of searching for and trying to find a good teaming partner to pursue federal contracting.
Yeah. I think, maybe because Darby said the joint venture is kind of like the last of the things, right? I think the journey that Darby's been on to sort of get to this point is kind of informative. So I don't know, maybe you talk about how you got here.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it on the way driving up here today. Cedar, who will be doing some filming for us in a little bit, had to listen to me on the 1 hour drive up here from Clinton, where our corporate office is. For me, I think that the relationship between Thunderbird and HRP has a lot to do with, I'll use Dan's term right out of the box, which I never used until I met Dan, but similar ethos.
Ethos.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I don't even know that I knew the word ethos existed. I thought it was from a Captain America movie or something like that.
I might have stolen it from there. It's
possible.
Something like that.
Yeah, but we started to spend time together in, offices of clients across the table from one another probably 10 years ago. I remember meeting Dan at a site where HRP had done a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and Thunderbird was just helping a client look at an issue that came up during the process. And after meeting Dan and finding out about how HRP handles problems, because it was a problem, I said, this is somebody who I really would enjoy working with. And the environmental consulting arena on a state basis in Connecticut is very competitive. There's, I think, since I arrived in Connecticut in 1996, I started working for a small firm on the coast called Hopkins Environmental Management. It was owned by a brilliant engineer, Mike Hopkins, who later sold the company. And I think I was the third person in that company as a young geologist out of college. And Mike really helped me understand the importance of a phase 1 and underground storage tank closures and things that happen when you're working for banks, right?
Yeah.
And at the time,
good old bank work.
Yeah, Dan was, I think that project we met on was a bank involvement where HRP had done a phase 1.
Honestly, don't remember.
Yeah,
but
I think
makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, the transaction occurs prior to like a pre-purchase due diligence situation. And there was a problem. And my work history goes back to 1986 when I enlisted in the Air Force for 4 years active duty. And almost immediately working with Dan, I said, were you in the military? And of course, Dan,
Yep.
you can almost tell, Dan will tell you, like, there's sort of a no BS, clear cut, let's get the job done so we can get on to the next thing way about prior military folks, and I knew instantly he was prior military. And so between that and the relationship that later formed with Jason Beach, once Jason and I got to know each other, we realized that we have an identical childhood. We both grew up as sort of like farm kids way out in the country, fishing for brook trout in a small stream and small town. He's from upstate New York. I'm from Pennsylvania. And we just kind of hit it off. And so that's like the first step. We get along. Yes. We feel like we get along.
We do. We get along very well.
Yeah, one of the cool things you're going to see if you have watched or if you haven't watched and you're going to, the video that will come out of the little office tour and interview we did down at Thunderbird that is available on our YouTube channel now. You'll see a picture of the original farm where Thunderbird gets its name from. So that was, your like childhood home, essentially. Not the farm itself, right? But that was like across the street.
Yeah, we had a farm just down the road, and our barn burnt down, I want to say 1972. I was 4 years old, something like that. We had a few cows in a barn, and that burnt down. So I spent every waking moment at the neighbor's 2,500-acre farm. They had about 100 dairy cows and with a trout stream running through the property. So it was a pretty cool childhood and way to grow up in the country. But after the military, it was on to college. And I don't know, Dan, did you go to school after on the GI Bill like I did?
Yes, that's exactly how I did it. Yeah, I got out and I'd saved up my GI money, and I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Wow, crazy.
You kind of think like a lawyer sometimes. I can see that.
People tell me that. I'm not sure I'm proud of that.
Well, it'd be such a great fit because you love lawyers so much.
I love lawyers.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
Well, there's some good ones.
I think above and beyond that, he might love a good argument.
Oh,
I do love a good argument.
I can confirm.
Yes. Tom and I have lots of arguments. So totally off subject, but like that's me and my best friend. Like that's what we do. We get together and we argue about stuff. And sometimes like if we're at parties and stuff, like we're that group of people, like we're in a room, like we're having an argument about something, and people walk in and they go, "Oh God," and they walk out of the room and everybody's like, "Are they okay? Are they okay?" My wife's all like, "No, that's just what they do. They're good."
Spirited discussion, right?
I think we might have ruined a few company functions with our spirited discussions, but we had a good time.
Yeah,
so
well, that's all that matters. We had a good time.
So we've talked about kind of the history of Thunderbird and how we started the JV. Let's talk now about why we started the joint venture. Why was that important for both companies?
So I'm always looking for alternate ways to get involved in our business space and to, explore new opportunities. HRP is a very growth-oriented, employee-centric operation, and then growth is fundamental to providing opportunities to people, so our employees. And, as Darby already sort of talked about, the market spaces that we're in are extremely competitive. So, we're always looking for different ways to sort of leverage opportunity and improve the firm and provide opportunities to folks. And then also, as we sort of touched on, being a veteran myself, I'm not service disabled like Darby is, but being a veteran myself, it's something that is important to me. I am one of those people who feels like veterans in the country always get short shrift, whether it's, benefits or health care. Learned, that, 40,000 of the homeless people in America right now are veterans, which is horrible. So it's something that is close to me and close to my origin story, and also is a good fit with HRP's business interests. So in that way, those two things sort of align very nicely, and it's just an obvious thing to want to do from a business perspective. So when the opportunity presented itself through Darby, it's kind of a no-brainer, to be honest.
Yeah. And the more you learn about the federal government, I've been at this for a few years, probably 15 years since I really started researching and trying to figure out how to leverage military history and convert it into doing business with the government. They have preferential contracting for a number of disadvantaged minority communities, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, service disabled, whatever the socioeconomic designation is. The government has tried to do what they can to make sure that those small disadvantaged businesses have a fair share at government contracting. But there's only so much they can do. And the reality of it is, after you try as a small business to do work with the government, you realize that the average contract is $10 million, right, which as a small business would be like 20 years worth of work,
Yeah.
I mean, we started the Thunderbird was founded in 2014 in the library of our home in Clinton, Connecticut. We've grown to 12 people after the last 8 years, but even with 10 or 12 people, you're not realistically going to take on a $20 million contract.
Right.
And the government doesn't issue $500 contracts. They've been buying things like 10,000 motorcycles off of Harley Davidson in 1941 for the whole existence of the government. There are huge blocks of contracting that get handed out. Very, very little work is set aside in small amounts. It's almost not worth the government's time. And it's much easier for them to contract with a large business that has 10,000 employees, give them a $100 million contract, and really ask them to hire small businesses as part of their fulfillment of the contract. but it doesn't always work that way. And so I did the math and came to the conclusion very quickly that in order for us to really, really have an opportunity to do some real federal contracting, we were going to need more horsepower, and we were going to need a teaming partner like an HRP, somebody who's got 100, 200 employees that can provide the services that come along with, these large federal contracts.
Yeah, the government, in its infinite wisdom, sometimes the government gets stuff right. I know that that's not a popular thing to say at the moment, but like sometimes government gets things right. And I think that they recognized in all of these programs, disadvantaged business enterprise programs, that if they only contract with giant entities, they're sort of building in at a federal level, which is the biggest buying agency or entity on earth, I think, really. I don't have a metric to back that up, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I think you are too.
Yeah. They're sort of building in inequality or lack of equity, because the small guy is never going to get an opportunity trying to compete against the giants that consume all of the contracts. And so recognizing that, they've set up these programs to try to give these small business enterprises an opportunity to compete. Obviously with something like veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, there's a lot of impetus at the federal level to make that a reality, because it's a way for America, if you will, to kind of give back to those people who have given something in service to the country. So they've built these programs that allow organizations like Thunderbird and HRP to create partnerships where smaller entities, so in this case Thunderbird, can use HRP assets and experience and resume and so on and so forth to elevate their competitive profile as we go out and compete for projects, sort of as Darby indicated, in a way that Thunderbird might not currently be able to compete because they're not big enough. So the idea is to allow other organizations like an HRP to sort of blow some oxygen into the growth curve of Thunderbird. That's kind of roughly the point.
That's it. And even when the teams work well together, like Thunderbird and HRP, it's an enormous climb. It's an uphill battle. Yeah. It takes resources from both organizations. But the one thing that we really have going for us is that we do work well together. And the government, the federal government that I speak of, whatever agency you want to pick, they do not want to work with untested teams. They've had horror stories where halfway through the contract, the relationship went bad, the work didn't get done, it stops work. Can you imagine like what happened this week in Yellowstone National Park? Just yesterday, like the park is closed indefinitely. All the roads were washed out by biblical flooding. The park is wiped out. I mean, the roads going into...
Pictures are crazy.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. And all of that work inside the park, most of the road work is being done by a service-disabled veteran-owned business with a large heavy highway contracting teaming partner. But again, limited resources, small business, and the government often wants to just push the easy button and call a 50,000 person firm to come in and bring helicopters in and fix things. But it's very difficult for companies to, win government work and then work together to complete it. And to be honest, we haven't worked out all the bugs. We've started running a few small projects through the books with the help of a lot of people, but especially Joe Cardinelli and Dawn Hittle, my wife. They've worked hard to establish a joint venture bank account, and everything we do is like the first time we've done it. So,
that's a great point. I was joking before we turned on the record button. It's kind of like getting married. We're basically taking two households with kids and trying to fold them together. That's how it has to work. So we have to have integrated accounting systems and integrated budgeting systems and personnel management systems and all of this stuff so that we can really collaborate over a project that needs to get completed. And so that process is a lot. And then, of course, the federal government adds its fair amount of red tape along the way just to make it all that much more interesting. But I don't know. I think that at some level is kind of part of the point, though. If you look back, we have a big state contract in New York, and we had a How We Doing meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they sort of said out loud, you guys are new on this contract, so we kind of threw you a bunch of hairy ones at the beginning to kind of see how you'd handle it. We apologize for that, but it's part of the test. Anyway, it just kind of reminded me. I think that a lot of the red tape that we get in this in this program is about sort of testing your ability to kind of work your way through this stuff so that you can sort of demonstrate that you actually can do things together.
I didn't realize that until recently, but you're right.
Yeah.
It really forces the two team members to work together to figure things out.
Yep. It's just part of the process, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But we're there.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. This is a big milestone. You know, we within the last month, we received our joint venture certification as a SDVOSB, Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. We're registered in SAM. We're getting a lot of help from people like you, Tom, and your team, Alicia, developing a joint venture logo. We're putting together a website. A lot has to be done to bring a new company to life, and that's essentially what we're doing.
Yeah, like lawyers, operating agreements, all of the things that people don't think about, contracts and apportionment of responsibility and, all of that sort of stuff. So it is like birthing a new business.
It is, and it's a lot of hard work, but the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Knock on wood.
Mm-hmm. So one of the aspects of the joint venture is this mentor-protege partnership. Can you both tell me a little bit more about what that means, what goes into that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm still learning, and this process has been an educational experience. I really had no idea how involved the SBA, the Small Business Administration, I had no idea how involved they were in this whole process. Yeah. It's the organization that has been tasked with administering a lot of small business programs, including the Mentor Protege, All Smalls Mentor Protege program. And when we learned that we needed to be part of that, we learned that we needed the SBA's blessing to our Mentor Protege agreement. I was disappointed in some ways that the agency that was doing the approval is not an agency that we're going to be working for.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I figured that we would be getting our mentor-protege relationship approved by the agencies that we're actually going to be contracting with. But the SBA is like GSA. The government pushes a lot of stuff over to them to vet teams before they have to interact with them.
Like professional administrators.
Exactly. Yeah. And that SBA process, I don't think we necessarily wanted to do that. It was kind of forced upon us by the process. And we had an idea we wanted to work together. We knew that it would be the apprentice and the master relationship or the mentor-protege relationship, but I didn't realize that there was a formal program that we had to write a business plan and do all these additional steps. It's kind of like going to the DMV. You're like, okay, you're going to get your license over in line 16. You go to line 16, and then you get to the head of the line. They're like, okay, take this paper and go to line 5, and you look at line 5, and there's 100 people in line 5, so you're back and forth going to each window. That's kind of how the process was for the last year. We've done this. Now what do we have to do?
It's a little like I forget what the name of the species is in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that's responsible for the intergalactic roads, but maybe I'm way off, but there's a movie about that.
That's a pretty good analogy I've seen.
But the mentor-protege piece at the end of the day is kind of like the most important part in terms of creating enterprise for the service-disabled veteran-owned business. Because what it does is, what we're talking about here largely, in our space at least, is technical stuff, technical projects. So whether it's a geo project or an engineering project, what have you, even the feds want to buy from people who actually have done it. You don't buy a skyscraper from a guy who's only built dog houses, because that's probably not a great idea. And so, when you're a smaller business, it's hard to generate that experience. Like, you can't get the job because you don't have the experience, but you don't have the experience to get the job, so you can't get the job. It's like this perfect circle.
Chicken before the egg.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what the Mentor Protege program does, essentially, is it allows the protege firm to use the resume and the resources and even the personnel of the mentor firm. So HRP has specific experience around doing, say, for example, explosive dust work, which is an EH&S thing, and Thunderbird does not. We could together compete for a federal contract that is about explosive dust using HRP's resume experience and Darby's service-disabled veteran-owned business status. So those two things come together and create this opportunity has both the experience to win the work, but also has the qualifications for the set aside, which the federal government has created for veterans in this context, to have an opportunity to compete with the big. So like that's the point. Mm-hmm. The mentor protege system creates the incubator space where those two things can come together and make a competitive joint venture entity. That's it.
That's it. Well said. And it's actually a really good program, and we rely on it every day. And you have to kind of force yourself to ask for help, because it's not just second nature. Like I find myself kind of waking up at my desk and going, what am I struggling for? Why don't I just call Dan or Jason or Tom or Alicia and recently Deb? I mean, we we're living in strange times right now. We recently had an employee test positive for COVID. It's a new hire, limited amount of like sick time, but just starting the job, and how do you respond to certain employee questions? And I mean, HRP's got a HR manager with 30 years experience.
10,000 million years of experience.
Yeah, so it's extremely helpful. And the mentor-protege relationship and the agreement is basically HRP committing, 400 hours a year or something to technical support, administrative support, marketing support. And this is part of that, like what we're doing right today, because it's amazing, really. It's a great program that I didn't understand why we were being forced to do. Yeah. And now that we're doing it, it's a little more obvious how it's designed to help us.
So it's reaching 400 hours total?
I don't know if that's the exact number. There's just so I'll be honest with you. I don't know that I even have a number in my head.
Yeah.
Actually, though, that's kind of why I think that we work so well together. The HRP ethos, right, is not really all about measuring those sort of gazintas and gazatas numbers, right?
Like, I don't know what the number is. I just, only because I helped Jason write the document. I was like,
we just got to make the sausage.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes it takes longer than others to make the sausage. And so you just make the sausage. Like at the end of the day, it's about making the sausage, right? We're not monitor. I mean, we have to monitor for reporting purposes, so I should be clear about that, because the feds could eventually ask for documentation that HRP has actually, in fact, provided support to Thunderbird. Mm-hmm. So we have to document it, but we don't have like a budget for it, either hours or money. We're just doing it because that's just kind of how we work. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got to the end of the year and it was 5 times that number. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
The hardest part is just asking for help, and you get overwhelmed. And but it's been good, because even though we have a big milestone, so we have done all the work for the last 2 years, really, working on getting to where we are now. And now the next sort of milestone is to win our first federal project, and that's what everyone is focused on. And I think that we're going to get there. But the only way to get there is to continue working as hard as we have been for like 2 years.
Yeah, that's an important point. Like, now that we have the certification, it's not like, okay, woohoo, now you've arrived, here's your diploma, and now you get all the jobs. All it really is an access pass to get in front of the people who released the work and have a conversation about that, and then demonstrate your collective competency and capabilities, and then hopefully get an award. There's still a lot of support from the federal government to sort of make that happen, which is why they do these set-asides. But you still have to go out there and make contacts and do direct marketing and directly compete. There's this whole world of federal marketing. It's a giant silo, but it's its own silo separate from the rest of the world, which is weird, but it is what it is.
And the joint venture is in a pretty good place to win those contracts, because my understanding, there aren't a lot of
service disabled veteran small businesses
that do what we do. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's actually can be a bigger challenge than you might think. The government has what they call the rule of two, and actually went all the way to the Supreme Court. If you look up the Kingdomware case that went to the Supreme Court about the rule of two, but it can be challenging. The government's sort of marketing research program involves what's called sources sought. Imagine like you're going to set work aside for an SDVOSB. But if you set the work aside and that work is building cars, and you set aside a $100 million contract, just you go ahead and set it aside, because your goal is to give more your share of work as a federal agency to an SDVOB. And then the contract goes out and nobody responds because there aren't any SDVOBs who actually make cars.
Yeah.
So the contract sits there, 6 months goes by, and everything just comes to a standstill. And the procurement officer has to then put it back out to bid to the general public. So rather than doing that, they use what's called a sources sought. And it's like putting their feelers out. They'll post a notice and say, can anyone do this? Not just SDVOB, but women-owned, minority-owned. There's Native American-owned. There's probably 5 or 6 socioeconomic groups, if not more. And then the sources sought is just requesting information from those groups saying, who can do this? And the rule of 2 basically says that a federal agency is not allowed to set work aside for a specific socioeconomic group unless at least 2 different companies can actually do the work. And there's got to be like some competition. I mean, there are some exceptions to that through called sole sourcing. Like if you're the only SDVOB that makes a hydrogen-powered car, right, and the government wants to buy it and there is no competition, they can award you $1 billion and you're the only one.
Right.
But the work we do, Tom, right, it is so specialized. There are very few, I think it's safe to say, Dan, I don't want to, there are very few veterans who get out of the military and then start a consulting firm.
Correct.
Compared to electricians and construction people.
Landscapers.
It's a science related field that is a lot more specialized, and that can be actually a hindrance because if we can do the work and we don't meet the rule of 2, the work never gets set aside anyway.
Right.
And so we've already started to see a little bit of that happening.
Which also opens up that whole other aspect of this silo where you need to, now that we have this joint venture, we need to go out and find other similar SDVOBs that we can collaborate with on things like sources sought. That's a whole nother, it's not a game, but it's a whole nother way of approaching the competitive landscape. So like, for example, if there was a contract in California to do groundwater monitoring at one of the Navy bases at Coronado or something, right? HRP and Thunderbird not being California companies, we wouldn't be well situated logistically to do that work. But from a resume perspective, we're fully capable of doing that work. But maybe there's a California SDVOB that's similar to what we've done that's, right outside the gates of Coronado that does the same thing. Maybe if we're talking to each other, we might both submit on that sources sought, and the Thunderbird HRP JV clearly is qualified, although probably not cost effective, but we could do the work. That sort of puts them in a position now in the rule of 2 to sort of win that set aside or at least have an opportunity for it. And then if that same kind of contract recurred at the Groton sub base in Connecticut, not well situated for that Coronado, California SDVOB, but it is for us, maybe they submit on that sources sought. Even beyond the basics, like there's this whole other universe of interconnected relationships that have to be built to sort of help all of these SDVOBs along, sort of create, it's almost like creating like a phalanx, right? Like, help them along to access those opportunities. So
we get calls all the time from SDVOBs around the country asking us to respond to sources sought because they want the work. They want to go after it, and they're concerned that not enough SDVOBs are responding. So it's a challenge every day.
But in that respect, though, it's kind of cool because it's all ex-military. And that community it's a different community than regular people walking down the street. I'm not saying that it's, special or anything, but there's a camaraderie that exists. It's an unspoken camaraderie that you don't even really need to see somebody or talk to them. It's just, if you wore the flag backwards on your shoulder, you're in a club.
Yeah, and one of our first job opportunities that we got with the federal government as a subcontractor came through another military member who was retired, who I contacted, didn't know who they were, but when they found out that we were both stationed in Panama from 86 to 88, sort of the off-the-record talk started immediately, and I started to get some really helpful advice. And, I remember the individual said, well, technically you could protest this award, but let me tell you how it really works. And you start to get people to trust you. And not that people walking down the street, like Dan said, don't trust each other. It's just that when you go through the process of your 4 years of active duty and you live on bases outside the country together. I mean, I remember my first Thanksgiving in Panama, there wasn't even a question. Like, my master sergeant said, you're coming to our house for dinner. And all the single airmen in the whole fire department were at his house having Thanksgiving dinner, which his wife made, and we all helped. And a bunch of 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids being stationed overseas for the first time. So there's a real camaraderie, and I'm thrilled that HRP has some military folks, and like Dan, it's great. We're looking forward to doing great things over the next few years.
All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break and transition into the Play Hard section of the podcast. We will be right back with you. Okay, so depending on how things go in the edit, you are either joining us after some technical difficulty or joining us for the first time on the Play Hard section of the 312 podcast. Welcome back.
To get that on film.
What's that?
I thought you were going to get that on film.
Yeah. Huh?
It's time for...
It's time.
That's an HRP bottle opener right there.
Yes, please welcome the Duchess to the podcast.
That was a near miss.
The Duchess.
Shh, don't say that.
De Bourgogne, which is our guest, Darby Hittle's
favorite beer.
That looks super chocolatey.
It's not. What kind of beer is it?
It's
Flemish red?
It's a Flemish red.
Yes.
Flemish red.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie.
I
have never heard of a Flemish red before.
Maybe like a cherry lambic or something.
Yeah. But, of course, we're in the Play Hard section, so it's all about having fun here. And I think for this one, we can talk about a common interest the two of you have that I know absolutely nothing about, which is hunting and fishing and basically the sportsmanship of the great outdoors. I know it's a great passion of yours, Darby.
Great passion.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more, because you kind of have your own little YouTube project here with a video that you shot of your trip to Montana.
I forgot that I showed you a part of that.
Yeah. It was very cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip?
Yeah, sure. For my 50th birthday in 2018, after applying in the lottery in Wyoming for year after year, I drew a limited quota archery-only elk tag in the Bighorn Mountains. And I hired an outfitter, and this time there was no search party.
Yeah,
but your dad wasn't a hunter, right?
Bird hunter.
Your grandfather, did you?
No, that's my Vermont grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah. Our origin story is a little different, but not that much different. My grandfather had a gentleman's farm up in outside of Rutland, Castleton, Vermont. And I spent a lot of time up there with him fishing, especially in the wintertime, do a lot of ice fishing, like on the Champlain Derby and stuff. And so that's probably where I generated my love for the great outdoors kind of thing. But it's always been more of a sportsman kind of thing than a backpacking or a camping kind of thing. I'm Darby's Air Force. I'm Army. I am so done with camping. I've done more camping in service of this country than anybody would ever care to acknowledge. In those tents you were talking about, they're called GP mediums, general purpose medium tent, and they're green and they stink. And you live in those for a while and you get over backpacking through the White Mountains and camping. Personally, at least.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of bird hunting, and it's like anything else. It's a way for friends to get together and to get away from all of the things. For me personally, I'm sure this is true for you too, Darby, but like when we go on our trips, we go to places where we don't really have cell phone coverage. Because as much as I like to, think that I can put that thing down and not respond to the latest, whatever it is, crisis or whatnot, I can't. And I really need like a mechanical disconnect, So if I don't have a signal, then like I'm good to go. So we go to places where we don't have cell phone coverage with a group of friends that have been doing it for a long time, and we do a lot of breaking each other's stones and, having conversations that are not, okay for polite society or, for our spouses kind of thing. And, It's man camp.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's good. It's fun. We have a great time, and then we've built durable, I think lifelong relationships that are hard to find these days.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, did I hear correctly that you had to win the lottery to go hunting on that trip?
Sort of. The Western big game hunting, it basically supply and demand. There's fewer big game animals available than there are hunters. So, as an example, there's an elk hunt in Pennsylvania, which they give 30 tags a year, and on average, they get 100,000 applicants for 30 tags.
That's crazy.
Wyoming isn't quite that bad,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it takes about 5 to 10 years to draw a real quality big game tag. And as Dan said, the older you get, it's more about just getting out of cell phone service and letting yourself recharge. We don't give ourselves an opportunity on a daily basis, even on weekends. You're trying to do lawn work and your phone is blowing up. It could be an attorney who's, part of a deal, or a client who feels like Saturday night at 10 o'clock is a good time to let you know that they want the report Monday first thing in the morning,
Exactly.
Consulting is extremely difficult and stressful, and it doesn't give you much of a break. So going to a canyon in Wyoming where even if you wanted to use your cell phone, you couldn't. That I think we've learned to put ourselves in those places. I have a bucket list trip coming up. I'll just say I've always wanted to go to Patagonia, and I got a call in February from a friend who said he had booked a trip with 3 other people, and one of the gentlemen canceled. Would I be interested in being a fourth on that? It's a Orvis endorsed lodge in Argentina. And it's 500,000 acre sheep ranch with a 90-mile trout stream running through the middle, and only 8 people a week to get to fish on it.
Wow!
I get to check off that big bucket list item of doing a little trout fishing in the shadow of the Andes down in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have special trout down there?
No, same trout.
They're all the same?
Yeah.
I know up in Maine they have the Maine, I think it's the blue trout.
Yeah,
No, there's a thing in Maine lakes up there. Hang on, I'm going to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Keep talking.
Most of the trout we catch were actually brought over from Germany. The big brown trout that we pursue as fly fishermen.
In the United States?
In the United States and in Argentina. I think after
Really?
World War II, a lot of the Germans who were soldiers in the war or, just migrated to South America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Didn't you ever see that TV show called
I know.
The Search for Adolf Hitler?
Yeah, I know that. I
They
didn't
ended
realize
up
they brought
down
the
in
trout with them.
Patagonia. Yeah. Oh yeah, they brought the trout because they were all fishermen and they wanted to catch trout.
So there was not really, or is that the dominant species of trout now? There was trout already in North America, in the Americas before that, right?
Yeah, brook trout.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the rainbow trout and the brown trout they're both stocked fish.
Mm-hmm.
So I quickly checked with the COO, Chief Operating Officer, which is Dawn, to see if there was a possibility to, make that trip. And of course, she knows, how much I love it and love to go to places like that. There's probably 10 places like that still on my bucket list. And after 2023, there'll be only 9. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Patagonia and, checking off a bucket list trip. But it's a ways off. So a lot of work to get done before then. So this summer, in terms of playing hard, I'd like to get up to the Farmington River, which is just down the street for you all here, but it takes me about an hour and a half to get there from the shoreline. Mm-hmm. We do have a small boat, which we've had for 23 years, and we keep it at a slip in Clinton. And so it's nice just to go down and go out and have a cocktail cruise. You should come down sometime, Tom.
Yes.
Come down and we'll
Absolutely.
grab a couple of beers. We'll go out on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
It's right down the street from our house. We're blessed to live in a coastal community where we got Long Island Sound right at our back door, so it's nice.
Yeah, I've lived up in Winsted, Connecticut, up in Litchfield County, northwest corner of Connecticut, my whole life, pretty much right next to the Farmington River. But I only recently realized, I knew people fished there all the time, but I only recently realized that it's one of the best fishing areas in the world.
It is the best in Connecticut, one of the best in New England. It's a destination fishery. Most of the license plates that I see in the parking lot on the Farmington River are from New York and Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, fishermen travel a long way to fish there.
So I'm not wrong.
Uh-huh.
It's called the Maine blueback trout.
Wow.
And it's an Arctic char that's a pond holdover from the last ice age that only exists in Maine.
Amazing.
Yep. I got it right here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
They're not in the rivers. They're only in the ponds.
Oh, in the ponds.
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me that I once claimed that salmon was the most delicious fish, but then you named some obscure fish in the North Atlantic that I'd never heard of before.
It's a tog?
Is that it?
Maybe. It's black bass, but yeah.
Okay. How obscure is that actually?
Not that obscure.
Okay, I just hadn't heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's not like a commercially, like a mass production commercially viable fish.
Mm-hmm.
They can catch them locally. You can get them at fishmongers here in Connecticut when they're in season or whatever. But
yeah, what's it like? What's the flavor like?
It's a white fish, so kind of like a flounder or something like that.
Yeah.
Or a grouper. I guess I probably would most closely associate it with like grouper or snapper, like it's in that kind of ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, tasty.
Very tasty.
I'm very interested in this elk hunt that you did. What, big game hunt up in Montana?
Right.
Yes.
Wyoming.
Yeah. Okay. So what qualifies as big game?
So deer.
Uh-huh. Really, deer?
Yeah.
I know nothing about this, by the way, so that's
so
why I'm going to be like shocked the whole time.
Yeah. So deer,
Not
bighorn
vermins.
deer, bear, bighorn sheep, elk, which is in the deer family, all the deer, antelope,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Bears.
Which is actually, antelope, which is actually a, what's the word that escapes me?
Ungulate?
Another word for an antelope.
Pronghorn? That's a different thing entirely.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think that's right. Antelope is a pronghorn. Whatever.
So you have to enter into a lottery in order to get the tags?
Pretty much. There's a limited supply of big game animals out west.
A lot more hunters.
A lot more hunters than there are animals. So,
do you know what the ratio to that is? Like how many the tags given to animals that are in the population to be culled?
Yeah. So in some parts of Arizona, each year you apply, you have less than a 1% chance of actually drawing a tag.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes years. And so what they do is they allow you to build up preference points. So you pay like $50 a year and you don't get to hunt, but you get a point and it goes in your bank on their website. So if I logged into the Wyoming Game and Fish website right now, I could show you that for mule deer, I have 14 points, which means for the last 14 years, I've been building points for a deer hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And for my elk hunt that I took in 2018, I had 10 points when I drew that.
How long did that take?
10 years.
Took 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
You get 1 point each year, and it goes in your bank. And then as you have more points, you can qualify for a higher. So, yeah, it was. It took a long time, and it's like Dan was saying, we're trying to basically subconsciously get out of cell phone range, right,
yes.
Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Consulting is very demanding on the mind and the body and everything, and it just you need to unplug. Yeah. And it's, I think, just even on vacation, interactions with other people, a lot of other people. If you go to a highly populated, like if you go to do a Orlando, Universal Studios or something like that. Ugh. It's hard because even those type of vacations can be very stressful. Yeah. Just finding a place to park, right. Getting into the park, standing in line, and the places that I think Dan and I mutually seek out. There's no parking places. You pull off the side of the road and you walk into the woods, into a quiet place.
Yeah, the more remote, the better.
It's difficult to get away, as a leader.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, and fortunately for her, but we just lost a really exceptional individual, Lauren Lomax. She cross-trained out of consulting and is going to be a teacher. Congratulations to her. She got a great job outside of Atlanta, moved from Orange, Connecticut down to Atlanta just a few months ago in February. But we certainly wish her the best. And she's an amazing individual. But after she left, it sort of washed over me. Like I don't really, I don't have anybody technically who can just sort of hold the fort while I actually go on vacation. So I have some concerns about going away for a week, especially to another country where the airfare isn't all that reliable.
Yeah.
You just got to do it.
So maybe I can get Dan to come down to Clinton for a week in January and just work out of the Thunderbird office in case something comes up.
I'm happy to do that. In February?
Keep things moving. It's January 7th through the 14th.
I'm available.
It's
cold then, so.
That's one nice thing about having a teaming partner. I didn't plan on asking.
Yeah, right. Is that why we started the JV?
But you know what I'm talking about, Dan. It's
100%.
It's hard to just get away, and
it's nearly impossible.
You almost have to work for a week solid. And the thing about the stress relief and the relaxation that we actually get while we're on vacation, the day you get back, it all gets washed away.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not like you can carry it on for months afterwards. You like within the first 4 hours of hitting the ground at the airport, your phone is blowing up with problems.
It's totally true.
So
yeah,
it's funny because I recently had what I think is probably the best vacation of my life, and it's funny because it was staying with this guy over here in the corner down at his place in Houston, just a week off, where it was just like doing fun things, hanging out with people that you enjoy spending time with, and just having a real disconnect, genuine disconnect from work.
Yeah, it's important.
And yeah, because having that reset, when I got back, I was able to like bring that positive energy with me into the office and, have a much better attitude towards things and have a lot more energy with what I was doing. And I really think it is so important. That's why it's so great to be at a place like HRP where you have a work-life balance, where you can reset and come back and be effective, because otherwise you're going to get burned out. And, aside from doing poor work here as a result of it, it's going to like make your life miserable.
Yeah. But you were telling me about an island down in the Bahamas. What did you say it was?
Cat Island.
Cat Island.
Yeah.
So you can do it at the beach too.
You can.
Those one cabana hut islands,
They're more difficult to get there. They usually involve 2 or 3 flights instead of one. And
and a boat ride at the end.
The last plane is a little,
puddle jumper.
Check out Cat Island, Fernandez Bay. Your wife would love it.
I'm in for that.
So you win the lottery, and then you get tags. What is meant by a tag? Because again, I am completely out of my depth on this.
Yeah, so a tag is like it's your permit to actually hunt.
Okay.
You can't hunt without a tag. It's like a license. It's just it's a piece of paper that says you're allowed to go out and pursue this big game animal, whether it's in my case, it was an elk. Mm-hmm. And they have different types of tags. You can either shoot an antlered elk or an antlerless elk. I had the unlimited. I had any elk tag. And so, with that in your pocket, you're free to go hunting on national forest in Wyoming.
It's very tightly controlled from a conservation perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big game is like a dirty word because of things that have happened in politics in the last several years, but like it's very in North America, it's very tightly controlled.
Yeah.
And actually what a lot of people don't recognize is that the money that people pay for those tags is actually one of the things that most importantly supports from a financial perspective open space preservation. Like that's where they fund all that stuff from.
Yeah. Hunting is hands down the best tool that conservation professionals have in terms of managing game populations and things like that. And when hunting really is not allowed or not permitted in an area, you see sort of populations getting all out of whack. Yeah. And that's what's going on in Yellowstone right now because, and it's very controversial. I'm not, oblivious to the fact that there are strong opinions on both sides of this, but I've been at the Buffalo Bill Cody Museum in Cody, Wyoming, where they have an exhibit on the controversial hunting of wolves and grizzly bears, and there's some pretty strong opinions of people who live just outside Yellowstone, and when the science doesn't work and the grizzly bears spill outside the park onto the golf courses and start eating people, it it gets a little,
which they do.
It's hard for us as humans to peacefully coexist with an apex predator like a grizzly bear. We have very little that we can do to.
We're tasty.
Yeah. So, and you see some pretty crazy things, Dan. You were talking about what were you talking about? There was a video of a person sort of challenging a buffalo in Yellowstone.
No, it was like literally last week or the week before. Some woman got gored in Yellowstone and died because she got too close to a buffalo, which that just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know how you.
Everything about that animal is indicates don't come near this thing.
It's a 2,000 pound.
Yeah, I think when people, and I've spent a lot of time in Yellowstone, I've been blessed to have many trips through the park, and I enjoy going there as often as I can. But I think that people who come from not only out of the state but out of the country, there's a lot of foreign, people that come from Europe and China and things to come see Yellowstone. They really feel like when they enter the park, they're entering a zoo where they are protected as visitors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They don't recognize that they're, in
wild spaces.
It's a wild animal environment. And
I actually saw a video because it came up because I was looking for the content on the woman who got unfortunately killed. But I saw a video I think it was in Yellowstone, some guy let his pit bull out of the back of his pickup truck. So there's lots of stereotypes there, but it was a big pit bull, and there was a bunch of bison down off the edge of the road in this gully, and the pit bull got out and just started barking and just went right at one of the bulls, and the bull just put its head down like this. And it tossed that pit bull. I swear to God, it looked like it went 100 feet.
Yeah.
It was like it was like somebody, like a kid tossing a baseball in the backyard. Yeah. It just went up into the air, and the dog landed. I don't know if it was hurt or not, and turned around and came running right back as fast as it ran out of the pickup truck. So it was kind of funny in that regard. But
luckily,
they're huge animals.
Mm-hmm.
But
why you would think you could walk up to one of those and
I don't know. But it's a special place, and I know. Yeah. Have you been to Yellowstone, Tom?
No, I've never been that far.
Yeah, so and as an SDVOSB, our joint venture is going to have an opportunity to work, for the National Park Service. We've done some work for the National Park Service right here in Connecticut at the Colt facility, and I know you've got a connection to the National Park Service, so we're really looking forward to becoming a National Park Service contractor. We've bid on groundwater monitoring, well sampling in Yellowstone. It's interesting, when you apply for the job, part of the qualifications that the government asks you is, are you bear aware? You don't normally see that type of thing. And so we had everyone change their resumes on the SF330s and add bear aware on the bottom.
I have to tell a little bear awareness story. It sort of fits in here pretty nicely. So when I got out of graduate school, I worked for the Corps of Engineers for a couple of years up in Alaska, taking samples, and it was a government job, but it was like a research assistant extension. And when you first go to Alaska with this group, it's called CREL. It's Cold Regions Research and Environmental Labs, which is actually based in Dover, New Hampshire, of all crazy places. But anyway, do all their work up in Alaska, basically. And so when you come in, you fly into Anchorage. And I don't know if this is still true because I'm old, so this was a long time ago. But they used to have a Sears, I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but they had this big Sears Roebuck in downtown Anchorage. And they would take all of the student researchers and post-grad researchers into Sears Roebuck, into the basement, because in the basement they had a stuffed Kodiak, which is a coastal grizzly bear.
Wow.
And it was I think it was at that time was the 110th largest ever taken. And you walk in and it's right there in the lobby, and it's posed in that classic Teddy Roosevelt, up on its rear haunches with its claws out kind of thing, So you walk in and the bear is I think it was 10'9".
Yeah.
And it was well over 1,000 pounds. And you couldn't put your arms around it. It's like an oak tree. You couldn't put your arms around it. Mm-hmm. And its claws were They were like 9 inches.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, listen, because, us kids from the Northeast are like, we've seen black bears, I have bears around, whatever, And they're like, so you just need to be aware, right? When you're out there, this is what's out there. Right?
There's a lot of big stuff out there.
And they will eat you. So you need to mind your P's and Q's. You need to pay attention to the all the lessons and the teaching, whatever. But we slept in tents up on the edge of this glacier. It was a Matanuska Glacier. And we had an electric cow fence around the camp, which was to keep the bears out, not to keep the people in. Mm-hmm. But we would all sleep with bear spray back then. And you get in your tent and you sleep. This is crazy, right? You get in your tent. we sort of figured out, listen, you're not gonna in your tent, if the bear comes in and tries to eat you, you're not gonna be aiming in, trying to right. So we would all sleep in our sleeping bags with our bear spray, and the idea was kind of like a hand grenade. Right? If the bear comes through the tent, you just pull the trigger while you're in your sleeping bag. And it's going to really suck, right, for you because it's, bear spray is 30% pepper spray. It's horrible. It's a bad day, right? Yeah. But sort of using the skunk analogy, no bear is going to eat you after you've sprayed yourself with that. They're going to be oh, and they're going to leave. So I lived like that for almost a year.
Did you see any bears?
Oh, yeah.
They were around the camp.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Hear them in the wire often.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I've only seen one grizzly bear in Yellowstone. Usually when I go there, it's in August. And because of all the tourist traffic, there's only a few roads in Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. And so because of the tourist traffic, anymore. The bears just get pushed back into the mountains. They don't spend a lot of time around the roads. So pretty rare to see a grizzly in August in Yellowstone because there's just so much vast mountains there. They don't need to be hanging around down by the road. Mm-hmm. But I was there in 2018 in May, and I saw a grizzly bear going up across the field. It's a special place. I hope that you both get to visit there.
Definitely. Yeah, the only bears I get to see are the ones that are ripping apart my trash bags in the middle of the night.
Little black bears.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I see black bears constantly.
In Connecticut?
Constantly. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, even in where I'm at in Winstead, which is basically in downtown, a small town, they're once or twice a month they're running through the neighborhood. And up in the more rural part, in Winchester Center, where my parents live, they would be there any night you put something out stinky. So we would have to chase them off a lot. I mean, my parents just recently sent me pictures of the damage done to the trash toter. They had to get a special one that will lock to keep the bears out of it. And the biggest bear they'd ever seen, it came through and was just ripping at this thing, tossing the toter around, trying to bite into it. And they got pictures of all the claw marks on the thing. But I remember one time the bears were coming by constantly, and mama bear came by with 3 cubs one time. Yeah. It was pretty early in the morning, and what they like to do is they open the trash toter, pull the bags out, and they drag them over to the nearest tree line, somewhere where they can kind of paw through it and then escape into cover if they want to. And we were surprising them and trying to chase them off, and the bears would just go immediately up a tree, and the mama bear would just run off into the woods, and they would just linger there and be like, you guys, you ready to go back in yet? Because with those bears, they're just they're so used to being around people and scavenging for food. They just know we'll just chill around here and wait for you to go away, and then we're just gonna come back over and eat your garbage again.
They're like Yogi Bear.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I saw one bear in Connecticut up on the Farmington River.
We have them right out back of the building here.
Oh yeah,
really?
See them pretty regularly out here too. Yeah.
Wow.
Seriously.
Yeah, we don't have bears down in southern Connecticut. There's 0 bears on the coastline.
I think there's still a sign on the back door.
Oh yeah.
Beware.
I see them. I see bears just as frequently, if not more frequently, than raccoons and possums.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a raccoon in ages.
Cool.
I only see dead ones. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, as in a roadkill.
Yeah.
Not it's not a hobby.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear to everybody out there.
Shooting raccoons.
No, not for me. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us on this episode of 312. Thanks to Darby from our joint venture partnership for coming up to see us. If you like this podcast episode, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And also, if you're just listening to us through the podcast app, please leave a 5-star review. Tell everybody how great it is. It really helps us out and helps us get the important message of environmental engineering and consulting out to the world. So we will see you all in the next episode. Between then, stay safe, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan.
Bye.
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 Yeah.